Housing Committee meeting on Tuesday, October 5th, 2021, at 4:30 PM in the Nauset Room. This is a hybrid meeting. Real-time public access is also provided by Orleans Channel 18 on the town website and cable television. Right. We have a quorum, and I don't know if someone is joining us on the Zoom. I think Rich Kendall is on the Zoom.
You don't have any committee members on Zoom right now.
Okay.
But I'll let you know if one comes.
Thank you. All right. On September 21st, we had a joint meeting with the Affordable Housing Trust Board, which was very informative, and we talked about a lot of things and have a lot of things to work for the future. So this particular meeting is going to be a discussion of some of those topics, follow up to it, and our experience with this affordable housing project. So I think we will, first item of business is the role of the Affordable Housing Committee regarding the review and advocacy of specific affordable housing trust projects. We did talk about that. We've talked about that for a while. We've been working on that, and we had some very good input at our last meeting. So I think one of the things that 107 Main Street did for us was to illuminate some of the things that we maybe didn't realize we needed to do with our committee. And I think, as in every experience, there's a learning component, and we can benefit from that and also and grow with that. And that's what I'm hoping we're going to think about today. You all have the papers, the two draft minutes from the two committees that really did an outline of the topics. Okay, before you. I think even though we were talking generalities and at the meeting, it was very hard not to put 107 Main Street in the discussion because it was foremost on all of our minds and the project was important to us. And Marcia gave me some excellent questions, which I'm going to share with them if that's all right with you. She should have got right to the point of what she saw from that discussion. So I thought I would just read. There's 4 nice questions there, and we have, if there's some comments about it, and then we can maybe go to each person on the committee and talk about any other issues they have regarding our role. And also, let me back up just one more thing. We're still working on our charge, and one of the things we had decided or suggested at our previous meeting before the September 21st was that we look at our charge in light of what we had learned on September 21st, and I think that was good advice because we did learn some new things. So if there's any points that we want to talk about today regarding that in generalities, and I think then Marcia said she was going to work a little bit more on trying to tighten up this charge and maybe move some of the tasks in sort of a grouping. Right now, they're a list of randomly listed, and maybe we're going to try to group them according to our role with the trust, with the education advocacy piece, and with any other roles that we think we have, and just I think the one phrase that came out really was champions of affordable housing. I think Michael used that phrase a lot, and I think that's what we all want to be. And so how do we become champions for affordable housing, even more so than we are right now, or more clearly in terms of what the town hears and how we reflect our enthusiasm to the town. So anyway, these are her 4 questions, and it says, what does the Affordable Housing Committee think about the 107 Main Street project? And is there additional, well, I guess we don't have to do that one, sorry. We don't need more. Do we need any more information regarding this project at this time? Do we need any more information to do our part? I mean, right now, things are sort of, we're waiting, I think, for information from HAC to see if they're going to change any of their numbers, or there's going to be any changes in any of the proposal. And that's probably, what, Marcia, a couple of weeks? Have they said in a while?
They said it would be the next month, so hopefully by the next the trust fund meeting, we'll have their question, or their information, whatever that is, yeah.
Okay, so I think we're sort of, and for that particular question, we're waiting to see what happens next. But any other comments about that? Anything else you need to know about that?
Part of it was that last discussion. I mean, my impression was that a lot of people didn't know as much about 107 or were surprised with the costs, et cetera. So I want to make sure that this committee gets information as soon as they can so that you can feel comfortable with the specific projects. So part of it is, what should this committee's role be as the trust, for example, is looking at specific projects? Should you be more involved in it? And 107 is an example. Should you have been more involved in the 107 discussion prior to your going to CPC for money?
Well, I think I wasn't at it, but I certainly watched it. I thought it was an excellent discussion from both the trust and the committee. And I think, Nancy, you touched on that, and I think you did too, that the fact that sometimes we've been in a role of catching up to these projects as they're being developed, and that we should be more involved in the early part of it. I think Katie's used that phrase, that we spend time catching up on some of these projects rather than being involved early on. So I think exploring, and I think that's one of the notes here, is to get us into the early review of these projects rather than jumping on board when they're, kind of already on their way, so to speak.
Correct.
So I thought that was a good discussion.
I think that helps a lot, because then we're not then we're able to support it in the ways that we need to support it, and we're ready for it, as opposed to trying to answer questions after the fact. And we learned that, and, I think that's, going forward, we need to make sure of that. Fran, did you have something?
I thought it was a good discussion, too, at that joint meeting. I thought one of the things that really hit me was the need for our education on two different levels. So we're talking about 107 Main Street as a specific project. And I think one of the suggestions was that in our conversation, each project should have its own kind of mission statement about why it meets the goals, the more general goals. And so I think that we could have outlined that perhaps more specifically. But then there's the other question of how we educate and have conversation amongst town residents about the more general goals that that this project does meet our general goals, and here's what our general goals are, and do we have really a buy-in from everyone about what our general goals are? And I think that one of the things that people really didn't understand when it came to the cost of each individual unit in that particular project, they saw it as the cost in that project, and therefore compared it to the cost in the Penrose. And rather than looking at, we have 10 years to provide different kinds of housing, and we're looking at some of them costing more and some of them costing less to the town in terms of subsidies. But overall, our goal is to have a clear financial plan, and I think that needs to be flushed out a little bit more.
I think you're right, and I think, I don't know which meeting it was, that MEF stood up and said that the Penrose Cape Cod 5 project was actually a gift to the town. And in a way, he was right because of the cost. But unfortunately, that just set the standard that everybody felt that's what it's going to be. And, when people started comparing, well, there's 5 units at Penrose, but you're only getting 1 unit for the same cost, apples and oranges, without the facts that they needed to know before they make those kind of statements. And there were, unfortunately, in my opinion, watching some of the meetings, there were a lot of opinions that were already formulated, and some people didn't want facts to get in the way of those opinions. That was just some of but moving forward, I think you're right, Fran. I think we need to, really differentiate. You have the larger picture, but when you get into these projects, to really point out that you can't just take the one project you saw and then think that's gonna be the standard for everything else. Because it is a learning curve. People didn't understand. I learned that too, that the size of the project depends on the grants you can get. So that's gonna be the thing. And I think the other thing that, I think Marcia said it, that one of the things we face, and it will continue to face no matter how hard we work, is anytime you hear, in my opinion, again, anytime you hear someone say, I'm all in favor of affordable housing, the next word you're gonna hear is but. You know, and it comes down to cost and location, and I think we need to work on selling that as much as we can.
And our goal has to be, we're all in favor of affordable housing because.
Right.
And that's how we have to rewrite the
exactly,
story.
right.
Here's
Because
what it does
That's
for
the
Yeah,
us.
right,
So-
not the but.
Here are the benefits for all of us.
what you just said, though, in terms of what you just outlined, and what we need to do is, that's another, we need to do that together with the trust board, because there's the finance and the goal and the vision. And we're looking at the vision. I'm sure they have a vision too, but that's more what we're talking about. And they're talking about, well, this is how much it's going to cost, and this is how we can pay for it. So, once again, we're going to be working together on some of these things.
I will just add to that, Nancy. I don't know that we need to do it with the trust. I think, we have our different roles,
Right.
right? But I think we can come up with how to advocate for different sized projects on our own. I don't think that that's a discussion that we need to have with the trust. I think that's sort of our role as the committee is to educate, right? So why is this size project beneficial versus this size project? And how can we justify the different costs of those two? It's gonna be up to the trust whether or not they wanna spend the money on it, right?
Yeah.
It's our job to decide why this project's great. Why is 107 great, and what justifies the cost of it? And that's the message we want to bring forward, and then it's going to be up to the trust to decide if they want to spend their money on it. I mean, we've already gone through that process, because we did it a little backwards
Right.
from what our original vision was, and that was sort of, and as we keep saying, opportunistic. We keep having these projects come to us, and we're sort of backpedaling on how to support them. So, so I agree with you that the trust needs to be involved, but I think as the committee, we can come up with our ways to support.
I like that. I think that.
Well,
we-
let me ask a specific question, and I haven't talked to Alan or anybody on the trust board on it, but should a member of this committee have been on the selection committee for the RFP for the 107 developer? It's just, that's a way to be involved, and that person could come back to this committee and say, this is the stuff that we're talking about. They talked a lot about comparative costs, so you would have been privy to that conversation. And really, that committee coming back to the full trust board and thoroughly reporting on the reasonings for going ahead with HAC.
think both
So I
of
think
those-
a lot more communication, but I wonder if, in the early stage of specific projects, whether this committee needs to be involved in specific ways that could help that understanding, or whether that's not your role, and you're waiting for the trust to bring forward with their recommended projects, and then you learn about it.
Yeah, so I think, Marcia, originally, the reason I joined the trust was to have that connection. So to have somebody that was on the committee and on the trust and could sort of do that at the same time. I am the first one to recognize that I haven't been as present as I was prior to my December when I had my third daughter. So I think, that hindered my ability to make that communication. So I think you're right, we do need to have a better line of communication. I think that that's also more productive. I think although our meeting on the 21st was really helpful to get all those conversations out there, I think we can be more direct by having a recommendation from the committee is this, and maybe asking Alan to put that on a standard agenda item. Anything the committee wants us to know or talk about, and then vice versa, you can have it if there's something the trust wants us to put on our agenda that, every month. And I'm not saying I want to be that person, but I think it makes sense to have somebody in the room on both instances to make that connection and maybe streamline the conversation.
I think the point I made the last time was, though, that I think originally people came to the Affordable Housing Committee with an idea. And then we looked at it and thought, did that fit into our plan, or do we think that was a good idea? And I still think the trust could do that. And I think we don't have to approve it, but I think it would be helpful if in the formative stages, this is a possibility. I know we need to act on things quickly, but it doesn't have to be super quickly. We do have a month to work at it. But I think it would be really helpful if this is an idea that's come to a certain bit of fruition. We don't want it to be I know it takes time to get an idea, but when they think they're at a moment, and that's happened in terms of maybe the trust board coming to me and telling me about something that's going to happen at the trust board. But I think if they came to our committee and just fleshed it out and get it and said, and then they came back with the more details afterwards. But I had asked to be on that, if we could have been on that committee initially, and was told because it was financial that was not a good idea. But I think in retrospect, I think it might have been, we might not have been a voting member. I don't think we need to be a voting member on the RFP, but we could be an auditing, somebody who could just sit there and be part of it, but not necessarily be a voting person, because that's not really our role at all. But the more information we have going forward on these projects, we've already proven that we can be more helpful in that regard.
Nancy, I respectfully, I just want to disagree with you for a second.
Okay.
Because I don't think an RFP is really a financial necessary decision, right? We're looking at a project, we're supporting it. We think this project is great because X, Y, and Z, it's going to fit in this, medium-sized project, and this is what we think it should entail. And an RFP is drafting or creating a document that tells the developers what we're looking for. I don't know that it really has a cost. I mean, the cost when they come back is if the cost is going to come back. We didn't go to HAC and say, hey, we have $130,000 a unit to spend. Tell me what you can do with it. The RFP was more, this is what we're looking for, and this is the feedback we got, without the financial piece. So I think it might be a good idea to recommend that there's a member of the committee on an RFP
That's what I'm
going
saying.
forward.
I do.
That's what I said.
Yeah. Oh,
So you disagree? That was.
I disagree that that the RFP's financial.
Oh, okay, but I think it would be good to just be at least aware of how
Yeah, I think you're right.
how this is put together. I mean, literally, it's just information, so I don't know where we take that from now, but we can make some recommendations to somebody. To you, Marcia?
Well, Katie is the liaison.
Katie?
I don't know, how do you think that should be?
Maybe we should just bring some
Well,
of
I'm
these
happy
things back.
to bring
discuss
anything you
them.
want to the trust board.
Okay.
You might want to go through this discussion and say how it would be helpful to this committee to know earlier more about specific projects. That might be one way of doing it. There may be some others. So you may want to sort of come up with if not a list, some general language that Katie can then take to the trust.
Nancy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
In the documents that I read that spelled out the difference between the trust and the committee, I thought that the committee originated projects and sent them on to the trust. What I'm hearing is the reverse of that.
Yes.
You're right, what you read, but in reality, that's,
My question is, do you want to take control back? Because you can look at it like site plan review, it's like you guys, I hear this, I thought that the committee was this global organization, and the trust was a part of that, but it was the legs and the arms and go do a project. But that's not what I'm hearing in terms of leadership or mission or anything.
Right. And that's a really good point. It sort of came out a little bit in that last meeting, and it came out, in fact, in this, the notes from the person who took the Affordable Housing Trust Board minutes, I highlighted ideas for future directions, and it was explore ways to increase the committee's role in the early review of possible projects, continue joint meetings as appropriate, and become partners in creating innovative solutions. So what you have just said is what they wrote in this text as well. But, this is been birthing this for about a year and 2 years now. I think it's time to decide. Fran?
That was how we envisioned it, except when we got into doing the practicality of how it worked, projects came to different people on the trust and on the committee. So in the guiding principles, what it says is when there is information about a possible development or project, that it be communicated to the director of planning. And then it should be directed to both the planning, the housing committee and the housing trust chairs. And that the three of them or 4, when now we have Marcia, decide what happens next. And that's what's in our guiding principles. Fact is, we haven't done that, but I think it's a reasonable process to go back to. The notion of you can't talk to somebody on the trust about a project before you talk to somebody on the committee about a project practically does not work.
Right.
So we have to be flexible about it.
I think maybe at the end of this, we can maybe try to put some of this into proposal to see if we can get some agreement from both sides on how to do that, because that was the idea of it. And occasionally it's happened, but it hasn't happened all the time, so I think. All right. The other question is sort of, we already discussed it a little bit. How should the Affordable Housing Committee participate in future discussions about it or any project? Future joint meetings, questions, concerns, issues sent from affordable housing. So I think we sort of talked about that, maybe having some recommendations or some concerns sent between committees. But that seems to be the easiest way to do it right now. So I think maybe at the end of this, we might try to summarize some of these ideas and run them by us and see if that's what we agree to, and then maybe we'll send them to the Affordable Housing Trust Board. Would that be a good idea?
I think so.
Yeah.
As we continue on with this. The third question Marcia asked was, what should Affordable Housing Committee's role be in preparing for 107 Main Street to maybe be a subject of the Springtown meeting? We don't know about the funding, we don't know a lot of these things, but Marcia's concern and mine as well is that it'll be Springtown meeting before we know it, and what our job is probably to see how we are going to, if we are going to have a role in communicating this plan, talking points, all the things that we talked about for Penrose. We did some of those things for Penrose and left other ones out. And I guess the question is, we don't really know yet, but in terms of timing, Marcia, maybe you could,
Well, I think
Tell
my
me.
concern there, and this doesn't have to be the time to talk about
Right.
it, don't wait for the month before
Right.
to decide what to do. So I would suggest that, depending on how 107 develops, I'm at this point assuming it's going to go ahead in some form and it's going to require some sort of subsidy. If it's going to go ahead, it's going to require something. And so the question is, when should this committee start talking about a communication plan, flyers, letters, all the things that you might want to do to support it? And I would just suggest that would be much sooner rather than much later.
I don't even know that, I got the impression from Alicia that the numbers aren't likely to change much. I mean, that was the impression I got.
Well, I think they're going to try to diminish the subsidy amount,
Okay.
but I doubt it will disappear.
Of course.
Yeah,
I don't think that that's a realistic expectation.
yeah.
But to Marcia's point, I think we can, why are these smaller projects worthwhile? And I think
Yeah.
framing just that, not even worrying about the money at this point and where it's coming from, we'll still be able to talk about why we need to do this and why that's a good location for it.
and how would you like to talk about that? Like, in
I'm
terms of.
gonna turn to Fran. She's the biggest advocate, I think, for this
Well, no,
project.
no,
so
I mean, in
I'll
terms
let
of
her
how we're
talk
going
about
to share this with the community, because if we're going to talk about it, I guess we need to find a way, the most effective way to share this information. And
I see.
I think the concept is the vision versus the actual project. I think we've got to bring it back to that. I think we mentioned that already, but I do think it's important that we show, Fran.
One thing that occurs to me is that we might put together a dog and pony show and go and visit various committees in town and present our large vision and how the individual developments might fit into that large vision and goal. And we could present to the Finance Committee, the Planning Board, the, there's a bunch, the
CPC.
CPC, obviously, the Design Review Committee, the
Architectural Review. Committee.
Architectural Review Committee, and we could do that all ahead.
Right.
And we could just do that as a process working through the winter months, if you will. And so we'll have our story out there. And it will be televised through meetings, and anybody who is watching the meetings can hear the presentation. The presentation could be on the website, whatever, however we want to do it. But it seems to me that the committees who working with us, we should all be working together, pushing this forward. And the fact that the CPC committee wasn't on board pushing forward, they weren't prepared yet, but we could have, or we still could, help to educate them way ahead of time.
Nancy, can I add to that?
Sure.
There's another group, the Hardscape Improvement Task Force, that has 5 different committees on it, meeting. George runs those meetings. That would be, if you get your dog and pony show together, I would take an agenda item on their meeting too. They meet once a month.
Could you repeat the name of that
What was it?
committee?
Hardscape Improvement Task Force. It's the post-sewer. But there are at least 5 committees that sit in the same room on that one. And a citizens forum, if it's a great show. And Governor Prince, the study is going to be going on as you are formulating this
Right.
message. I think it's critical that you get it out.
And from what I understand, HAC is at this point intending to proceed with permitting processes. So they're going to go to architecture review. I don't think it's been scheduled, but they are going to go to site plan review, architecture review, certainly back to CPC, et cetera. So that's all going to be happening soon.
And to Fran's point, I think she really highlighted an important piece, which is that the funding for 107 and the way that it was addressed, I think, was a bit rushed. And I don't think CPC was ready for that. It was sort of sprung on them, as honestly, it felt kind of sprung on the trust. I don't think anybody really had the time to really have that conversation and formulate. It was a little bit like, wait, whoa, all of a sudden? And then to boot, it was out of the cycle for CPC, and we're asking to bond it again for CPC. So I think it was a whole lot that we asked of them without giving them an opportunity to really understand the project. So I think that was a lesson learned, and I think we'll do it differently again. But all that just lends to, I think that that's a good idea, Fran.
I will say, picking up on what Fran, I think this committee should be the generator of that overall communication planning.
Yeah.
And then in coordination with the trust, but this body be it. So you did it for Penrose. I think you can expand that kind of model, the key talking points, the various methods used, a general flyer, a specific flyer, whether you're gonna have a special town meeting, a public meeting of any sort, citizen forum, whatever it is, but lay it all out, but well ahead of time, and then coordinate with all the bodies that you need to get on schedules, et cetera. But I think this is the committee that, I will say, take the lead in that overall communication picture.
So I would make a suggestion that maybe we work to put something together, and I don't think it should be long. I think we're talking 15 minutes. That just says, small, medium, large. These are the projects, here are examples of each of the projects, and this is why each one is important. And maybe we get a couple of us each take a project. So what's the benefit of Habitat? What's the benefit of that build? What's the benefit of 107? And what's the benefit of Penrose? And more small, medium, large, and then these are examples. So when somebody asks, tell me what a medium project looks like, this is why. And I think if maybe we each take one and then maybe an intro, obviously, and put it together, I think that could be effective. I also thought it was effective, HAC's presentation of, this is where the funding comes for a tax credit, and this is where the funding comes for
That
anything
needs to be
smaller
shown.
than whatever it was, 20 units.
Right.
I think that's effective, and I'm sure they'll probably be willing to lend us that
Right,
graph.
that needs to be included in it.
Yeah. And-
And we
Can I
had-
ask a subtle question to that point? Just a subtle thing. As you develop your story, because what concerns me listening, not to you guys, but to the CPC review, was that sometimes I think people are going beyond their purview and they're reacting emotionally to a project, whether they like it or not, and their purview isn't that. And so I think in order to combat that emotional thing, the trust has built a process in terms of design review, the community agreement when projects are done, the listening sessions. There's a lot of tools that are there that I think also should be part of your presentation. we even have the visual history of housing types, little to big, that you could sort through and address that piece.
Andrea, I'm thinking you're having a lot to say, but nobody's hearing you except us.
You may join up here.
Well, join us up here.
Join us up here.
I'm supposed to be listening, but as you're building this, you're more,
Andrea, thank you for pointing that out. It's a little late,
you
but
have so many tools that you haven't started to use yet that can deal with keeping, when you go in front of funders or approval boards, remind them their purview is not to redesign your project, right? But in order to assuage their fear or their taste issues, you can educate the public about the tools that the trust has developed specifically to tailor a project to the neighborhood. And the visual references and the design guidelines and the community agreements that have been developed. Everybody's been working really hard. And you have developed tools to make projects successful that I'm sure the public may not know about yet. That's all. I just think as you develop your talking points.
would you like to start this now? I don't mean today, but do we want to try to make a stab at this, give ourselves a date to start thinking about how to do this? Do we?
Yeah, I mean,
I think we should probably give ourselves.
it's difficult
some
because the whole
kind of an
committee's not here
Right.
to, assign tasks to. But, I mean, if you really want to get it started, I would volunteer to take the Habitat House as the part that I'll work on. But I don't know that we've decided that this is the strategy, or I don't know that we've made that decision
I
yet.
think what I wanted this meeting to be was sort of like, put it all out on the table, and then us to go back and sort of review what we talked about and make a plan. Because I feel like we put a lot out at the 21st meeting, and it's still sort of churning with us, but I think we're narrowing it down now, and I think we do need a presentation. And the problem with all these presentations, though, I'm going to tell you, is that as soon as, if we don't do the financial piece on these presentations, that's the first question everybody asks, because everything with the town
Needs to be included.
is related to how much does it cost, or is this going to be something? That's just a reality of living in a town that's based on a town meeting. So to take that piece out, I think somehow we're going to have to work on this with somebody, with the other groups, in terms of, yes, it's a great theory, but in the end, the person will say, this is a great idea, but what does it cost? And so I think we're going to have to come to terms with that and somehow, or just accept the fact, or just ask people to accept the fact that they would like different types of affordable housing in their town, and these are the possibilities that we could have, and get people on board with that. That's the option, and those are the two options to present this question.
But I think with the examples, now that we have an example of
Right.
each one, that those come with costs. We know what those are
They're
costing.
gonna
And we
be-
can make a chart like the hack chart for each of these projects, exactly
will
where the
warn you, they
subsidy
aren't-
comes from.
They're not gonna fit in nice, neat
Right.
They don't.
categories.
They
A lot
don't.
of what you do with affordable housing is you have to be somewhat opportunistic, and you have to, if you're gonna go a certain way, you make it work. And there may be funding, may not. You position yourself for, it's a very, what's the word, entrepreneurial approach to this. So it's not nice, clean categories. It fits from A to B, and so it's never that neat. And you will still, whatever categories you come up, you will say, I'm all for this, but it costs too much.
Well, and I think you brought that up at the last meeting, which is, we need to figure out if the town has an appetite to spend that
Yes,
much money.
That's
Yes.
right.
And, we know it's worthwhile, but I think we need to educate the town, and hopefully they will come on board with us as well, because whether or not they do have an appetite is
You know how the town has a 5-year capital plan?
Yes.
And they sort of plan out the big capital expenditures that are going to happen over the 5 years, and people are talking about how you might do that over 10 years or longer. Well, in a way, we could do the same thing. We could say, this is where we want to be in 10 years from now, and here are the pieces of how to get there. And some of them may come sooner and others may come later, but this is the overall plan. And I think that would allow for people to understand some flexibility when talking about any one project.
It's sort of like the pipeline idea or something different.
Right, well, you have a 10-year
We
plan.
do have that,
Yeah.
and we have a pipeline of where things are going, so.
Building a pipeline is a little more complicated. I think the 10-year plan has been a very good goal, because you can point to it, et cetera. Fleshing it out much more, whether you take the 85 and you divide it into categories, is really difficult, because it really depends on the opportunities, what happens to come down the road, what the funding is. So going much more specific than 85 and 15, for example, it would be hard. Now, I think where you're heading is, you have some sort of guidelines as to, or principles as to how overall you want the long-term, broad, affordable housing to play out. You want it to respond to the village center and the density possibilities there, but you also want to adapt to neighborhood and opportunities when you can fit into a neighborhood, which I really think any project can, if you're willing to take the effort and pay the money. And so maybe what you're aiming to is, there are principles of what would make for good affordable housing. Whether you have the opportunity in a 5-year span or a 10-year span depends on so many other different things. So it's hard to
Which
do
are out of our control.
it's hard to do a financial 10-year plan, really.
I like combining those two things, the principles of good affordable housing, and that fits into your small, medium, large, and also the 10-year plan, a general 10-year plan.
And I think we have all of these.
No,
I think
Yeah,
we just
you
need to,
have a
I'm
lot
just
of
listening.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just have
we
to
just
put it
gotta
together.
put it into a short
So a
15-minute
Short,
spiel.
it's gotta be, yeah.
And even thinking about it now, I mean, there's the documents that were discussed at the trust board, like the CPC plan that's escaping me, that was just redone, that Alan referenced. It's on their website. And our guiding principles and our charts. I mean, I think we have it all, honestly. And then obviously the study.
Right.
It's just, let's condense it into something that people are going to listen to for, and pay attention to, as opposed to all this stuff that's sort of floating out there.
More like an updating and a restating of your work. I also think it's worth to address, because I hear a lot of pushback. I was on a walk trying to address this with a resident, because what happens, there's still the knee-jerk, I don't want those people. If I build affordable housing next to me, it's gonna be drunks and drug addicts, and so, I know, but this is the language that people use. So I think there's still the issue of what happens to us as a community if we don't build attainable, affordable now with a median home price of $800,000 and a year-round salary of 42 is, that's real, that's now. And housing production is a 2 to 3 to 5 year. So just kind of reasserting reality in your opening, we can't afford to wait. We will become a community that doesn't have any future.
Andrea, could you scooch up to the microphone just a little bit? Thank you. Thank you.
I'm gonna
I
go
couldn't
away. I'm
catch it.
supposed to be just listening.
Well, I thought you were supposed to listen and advise.
Yes.
I'm so prejudiced.
Well,
And I think the thing we should always remember is how fortunate we've been in the last year and a half to get these opportunities.
Right.
I mean, we talked about this before. Some of us have been on the Affordable Housing Committee for a long time, and we'd sit every day, is there anything to buy? Is there anything to use? And now we have it, and I think that is exciting, and I think we're excited about it, but maybe we need to explain that excitement to other people, because there wasn't an opportunity before, and now it seems like a lot to people, but it's only the right amount is actually what we finally have right now, so.
one of the, to follow up on Andrea's point about, the reaction in people's minds about who these people are. One of the things that Habitat did a few years ago was actually have Habitat homeowners do a little short video clip of who they were that have gotten a house and living in Habitat. And you saw and you see there are these young families that are working, and it's just helped them survive and bring their families together. It's just off the top of my head. I'm not saying we do that kind of video, but perhaps you've got the example in Eastham of that project. Who are those people that are living there? If you get some of them to just give a few sentences about who they are and what that affordable housing has meant to them. You know, it puts a face on those people more than what people are thinking about. So going forward, that may be something to look into.
And we do have a wonderful person coming into this Habitat House that's going to be
Right.
dedicated tomorrow.
Right.
And she is a perfect example of someone who wants to move forward and was limited by what the rules were. And now she's going to be able to
Right.
grow and go to school and get a better job and do all these things because she's going to be able to afford her mortgage. And she is definitely willing to share her story.
They all are. I mean, everybody
so
that ever
I think
had a
that-
Habitat House, yeah.
Community Development Partnership has a lot of stories along
Sure,
those
they do.
lines, and they're the ones that developed the phrase, "We can't afford to lose the people who can't afford to live here."
Exactly.
And
Right.
I think that to use them and partner with them in some of the storytelling is,
Right.
But, that showed what happens to the people that we're gonna lose, by showing these are the people you didn't lose.
Right,
Because you
there you
provided
go.
affordable
Yeah.
housing.
Right.
Could
Are you
maybe
still on that
help
board?
some of these people.
Are you still on the board at CVP?
Okay, well, I think we got a lot of ideas for this one. Now it's a question of putting it together and coming up with a plan that we can,
Do you want to maybe suggest or I will suggest a agenda item for next meeting, hopefully when more of us are here, to sort of assign tasks of how we can accomplish this?
yes. I do have an issue with the November meeting with our timing, so we need to,
Oh,
it
right,
may
the
not be,
voting.
but if we only had that one topic for our meeting for November. I don't know if I can get off the topic until we get to the end or not, so suggested for the November meeting, yes. And then we'll talk about how we can do that, okay?
how to move from conversation to action.
Conversation to action. Nice discussion. Thank you, everybody. The second one is a shorter one. It's the role of the Affordable Housing Committee regarding CPC requests. I brought this up at the last meeting as well. Historically, we were the ones who went to CPC and asked for funding for the trust, and it made sense. And we kept this as an idea because we wanted to show support for the trust. But in my experience in the last month, I suggest that we maybe let the trust ask for CPC money because it makes more sense to the CPC. Maybe it makes sense to us in terms of we are supporting this endeavor, but I don't think it makes sense to the CPC in terms of who's on first as far as the payment, so.
You mentioned that at the joint meeting, and there didn't seem to be any pushback. I mean,
Right.
everybody seemed to think, I think that makes sense, not to have us do it.
Haven't you in the past requested a chunk of money to go to the trust?
Yeah, that's what we're talking
That's what
about.
we're talking
Yeah,
about.
that's what
Right,
we're talking
as
about.
opposed to bonding $1 million for a project.
Right, but up
It
to,
seems to me that's the two different things, right?
I think it's either or. I mean, I don't,
But
Even
is there a
asking-
role for the committee in the overall, we need to keep funding the trust so that they are able to take advantage of opportunities as they come along?
I think the trust can speak for themselves. They're established now. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I understand what you're saying. It does show that the committee continues to support the trust, but I
and
think
we
the
can
trust is
go and
established.
support, we can
Well,
go to
yeah,
the meeting and
right.
support the trust request as a backup for them. But I think it was confusing when we went to even, I know part of it was the timing of this request, but I also think it was confusing for them. Well, is that money going to, actually it got written up incorrectly. Is that money going to go to the specific project or the general trust? And if the general trust is using the money toward the specific project, it sounded really good in theory, but in reality, I don't think it achieves what we wanted to do in the past. We can still go to CPC and ask for, we still have money for educational purposes and for other purposes that we'd like to support. But I
Well,
think.
if you're not, my thought is, and maybe it's not a CPC request, is if you're talking about a 10-year plan, what is the magnitude of funding that is required to fund an ongoing effort for affordable housing along the lines of the needs that you've identified? Because 100 units is only a tiny part of the needs you've identified, and you're going to identify more. So the question is whether you talk about what it what the town will have to commit, not specific dollar amounts, but this is a long-term major investment tied to a humongous need. So I guess that's what I'm, whether it's a CPC request or the fact that it's going to require a lot of money year after year.
Well, maybe that's part of our presentation that explains that is, because I think that CPC isn't the only possibility for, you talked
Yeah.
about other ways of funding. I hope the trust is going to start looking at that a little bit broader. You brought that up at the last meeting, Katie.
I mean, it's something that I've been advocating for since the trust got created. We don't have enough funding to do what needs to be done. And it's never been enough, and we need to have a real conversation about where else that money can come from, because it's not, even if CPC gives all of our 10% and bonds all of our requests, it's not gonna be enough to make the amount of housing that we need. And CPC has been very supportive, but we can't rely solely on CPC for funding.
Nancy, can I ask a question?
Yes.
If you, as the Housing Committee, are responsible for the umbrella, kind of the big picture of the town, I think I think you would want to advocate that the trust has to grow financially in order to facilitate your plan. So it's not the trust is on its own. That you're the oversight, you're the parents, and the teenager just got into the car. But you're not, you're still paying the insurance, and you're still responsible for the maintenance, because this trust is brand new, and it can't do your plan unless you assist it and are part of the advocacy for stabilizing it and growing and helping it do its work.
It's an
But-
interesting analogy, but I'm not sure the trust would agree with that analogy.
But it's
This-
in your governance documents. The trust was born out of the committee.
Right.
It's not the other way around. Unless you want to give up that control and look at the trust as a separate entity, and I think you'll always be fighting in some ways. Because you are really the, at least in how I understood your roles, you're the ones with the big picture, and they're the project managers. I mean, it's getting touchy here, but it's kind of like a chicken or egg right now, and I didn't think that was the way this was formed. I mean, maybe it needs adjustment. The other thing I would request is that there should be a 30-second elevator speech about the plan for Orleans housing. I haven't heard it yet, the updated plan. And I think that would allow you to address any group of people and know how to talk to them if everybody's speaking the same language. I'm not sure we're all on the same page in our vision. Well, I know we're not.
Well, to your point, Nancy, and I don't know if you're entertaining a motion, but I would make a motion to recommend the trust do any CPC requests in the future, and take it out of the Affordable Housing Committee's hands. I think it makes the most sense to be coming from the trust. That's not to say we won't advocate for additional funding for the trust or anything like that, but I do agree with you that I think that the trust should be making those requests to CPC directly.
I will second that motion. Any discussion?
I just say I did agree and had agreed when we first talked about it, but I think Andrea makes an excellent point about going to CPC and saying, you know, we as the Affordable Housing Committee are requesting another 500,000 be given to the trust board because we see this vision that we have and formulated for future projects, and we see the need for them.
I did say
have
that.
the
I did
support.
say that when I went. That was my speech.
Okay.
And it didn't go, it didn't,
No, we could
But-
still go.
we don't know if that was because it was out of order, that process, or we don't know if there was another request from the trust that confused people. There's a lot of issues in terms of why that didn't work.
Right,
The
in that one case, but I mean, in previous cases, when we've gone for the yearly 500,000 or whatever.
So I would be not in favor of your motion, Katie, because I think that's sort of cut and dry. The trust, the committee votes this. I would suggest that we need to talk further about this and talk with the trust about it, as opposed to taking a position on our own and just doing it cut and dried.
And Nancy, you have other tools. I mean, to Bill's point, I wasn't saying, I think the trust, when it has a project, the trust should be asking directly for funds for that project.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
But
understand
I'm
that.
saying, don't give up control of financially, along with your plan. To Marcia's point, there should be a financial, and so at times when the trust is going to make, the same way FinCom and the Select Board both vote on warrant articles, you may have a vote that you take that supports a request. But I'm saying, don't give up the big picture of building the financial legs of how the town creates housing. That's all. I thought you were the umbrella organization of this.
Well, no, I mean, historically, pre-trust, we didn't make any requests to the CPC for money. We made recommendations based on the people that were making the requests.
No.
Typically, if somebody wanted a project and they wanted money from CPC to do a project, they would make the request to CPC, and CPC would say, here's all our housing projects. Which ones do you recommend? And then we would make a recommendation to CPC that we thought we would support X, Y, and Z.
I think we did, we had a little trust before that we had money in, correct? Before we made the big trust, we had money in that. I wish George was here right now, because he would tell me exactly.
And there was around $20,000 to $25,000, which all went into the trust when it was created. But we never asked to fund that. That was something that was created that we could get access to by request of the Board of Select.
Right. But we never
So-
put money into that from the CPC?
I mean, I can't say never. To the best of my recollection, we never requested money directly from the CPC
Okay.
So when,
until the trust.
so the trust was formed, and then it just fell to us to then.
Well, when the trust was formed, there was a couple articles that backed up each other. So first, it was creating the trust.
Right.
Second, it was taking the trust the little trust that Nancy's referring to go into that trust. And then it was, we asked the town to fund $275,000 to go into the trust. And then we also had a CPC article that asking CPC to put money into our newly formed trust.
Correct. Yes, you're correct.
And then after that.
And then after that, we
kept
just
going
continued
back.
to make the request to CPC to fund the trust. So it's not something that's, I guess my point is, it's not, we haven't always requested the money. It was always, people came to us with a project, we had an opportunity to comment on it. Will you support this when we make our application to CPC? We made a recommendation to CPC that they considered.
Which brings us back to having the trust come, so we can recommend that it's a good thing that they're going to bring to the CPC, what we talked about initially.
I mean-
Because that's why that would be helpful for
And a
us to
lot's,
go back.
and a lot's changed since then, and I don't know that we go back to, the way it was, but historically, we were not making the request. We've just been making the request because the trust wasn't able to make that request at the outset, because it was informed.
Fran's
Do you want to
idea,
keep your,
let's-
remove your motion, or do you want to vote?
I mean, I'll withdraw my motion if people want to have more discussion. I think we need to get to a point that we make some decisions as opposed to
Yeah.
continuing to have a lot of discussion.
I
But
hear you.
I think if we want to take a position that we want to make CPC requests, then we can make that position. But I think we need to start producing as opposed
Did
to
your
continuing to have
motion
conversation.
recommend to the trust that they do it, or was it that they do it?
Well, I think it was that we're not going to do it. And they
Okay.
can decide how they're going to do it. But I'll withdraw the motion. I'm just saying that
Well,
I
agree
want to
with-
move forward
Yeah,
in
I
one
agree.
way or
We
another.
keep talking, and we need to, I'm wondering if the motion could be to recommend to the trust that they be the ones to go, and that kind of kicks off a further discussion with them, as you said. At the next joint meeting, make that decision, that, okay, either everybody agrees that it's fine for them to do it, or the argument that we should be still involved.
Well, both Marcia and Andrea pointed out that the different type of request,
Oh,
one for
yeah,
a
yeah.
specific project, and the overall, we've got to fund a 10-year plan. And I agree, I see those as two very different
Oh,
things.
definitely.
And so,
Yeah.
I personally would be in favor of the trust requesting their own project monies from CPC, but I
Yeah.
still think that we should be advocating for ways to fund the trust in general for our overall plan. That's just my personal place.
And not limited to CPC.
And not limited to CPC, exactly. Yep.
So if you want to make a recommendation, Nancy, and you wanted to email Alan to put a placeholder on the agenda for
The recommendation.
affordable housing updates, I'm happy to make any recommendation that the board would like me to, the committee would like me to.
To your point, I came to try to decide these two things, and neither one has been decided today, so I came in with that intention, so.
Well,
I'm-
I think there's agreement for specific projects, the trust should request
definitely.
CPC
Well,
money. You
definitely.
can get that. Then the other one is a broader question that you may want to
It's a
either
yearly
talk
request.
more
for-
about, or say we have to have further discussion. Or it's a separate issue, and you can decide now, or you can say you'll talk about it next time, or you'll talk to the trust about it, or whatever. But I
But
think
correct-
it's fairly clear, you want the trust to request project-specific funding from CPC, not this
Oh,
committee.
definitely.
But correct me if I'm wrong, if we're putting in a CPC request for this year, it's due November?
Yeah, soon.
And we
very
may not
soon.
have a November meeting, so. I'm just saying.
Right, right. Yeah, what are you gonna do this year?
Not supposed to have silence on the meeting here. I feel that we should,
Can we take our next meeting, or when we're going to meet next, out of order perhaps? That might help us make
can
this
we do that?
decision.
Let's do that, okay.
Sure.
This was the situation for the next meeting. November 2nd is our scheduled meeting, and that's Election Day. And we can't have a meeting on Election Day. That happened to us last year. November 9th, we can have a one-hour meeting according to the schedule of what's already been planned, which is the following Tuesday. And on November 16th, we can have a full meeting, but that's also the day the trust meets, which may or may not be a problem. But that was those are the options I was given by Mia for our November meeting. So I bring it to the group. We can have a one-hour meeting on the 9th and only talk about certain specific things and make a decision maybe, or we can meet at the same time as the trust.
I like the ninth hour meeting, because it forces us to
Yep.
meet and make decisions and
agree.
get off it and get moving.
Yep.
Rather than keep talking.
Okay?
That's just off the top of my head.
Does everybody else think about that?
I'm fine with November 9th at 9 if everyone's available.
What about Fran?
And by an hour meeting, I assume you mean 4:30 to 5:30? or-
Yes. That's what I think. I think there's, I think planning is in this room. I'm not exactly sure why. That's what she gave me the times, but
Planning board is here at 4 o'clock on
4
that day,
o'clock.
on the 9th.
Must be the Skaket room then. I don't know why she's,
Well, it might be that you'd be downstairs.
right. So I think if we sort of write up what we've sort of discussed today and be ready for a decision maybe in terms of at the next meeting where we want to go. I think one of the issues about the trust issue about putting in this money in, if it does back up our overall plan, that it makes sense in terms of what we're trying to present to the people. So that maybe okay. So November 9th will be the meeting. I will get that confirmed and let you know about that. All right. All right, the next one is just even more talking, but I would like to see, not make this one go too long, but in terms of the Governor Prince, George said the select board is going to make their decisions hopefully on tomorrow on who's going to be on the board, and that they'll get it started pretty soon. Going back to this idea of being champions of affordable housing and whatever happens on there will be the recommendation of the committee, but as people champion affordable housing, we should have a vision, if in our world, what we would like to see there, because we have a representative, Fran McLennan, who will be going to every meeting, and she will have many opinions of her own, but I also think she's going to be a person who is going to come and hopefully share some of the thoughts that we think are important.
Well, I'm representing
Yes,
you,
well,
so
I
I'm hoping
need
your
that will be-
thoughts.
So, but we need to be able to feed that a little bit and not just say whatever comes out, comes out. And that goes with our example of small, medium, or large on that property as well. So I think probably, we don't have to do that today, but maybe we need to do a little brainstorming on what kind of aspects of this project do we think we could influence in some way in terms of if housing is on Governor Prince, which we all hoped would happen, what might we like to see? And I think, not specific project, but we have a lot of information already in terms of what has been designed and what's happened. So I think if we're not advocating for it at that committee, then that doesn't make any sense to me. So I think, and hopefully that'll be on our agenda. Once you actually start meeting, there'll be a report maybe back from that in terms of, what you're learning about housing on that particular property. So,
Well, can I just ask a question, and maybe this one is for Marcia? I mean, I don't even know where to start to have that conversation. I mean, I don't know what kind of housing should be on there. I mean, should we talk about what that planning looks like? I mean, obviously, we need to know how much land we're working with to make, but we don't know that yet. So how do we start this planning process without that piece of information?
And you may want to do some sort of formal visioning with or without the consultant. But I think if nothing else, like with the 107, when I happened on it, there had been some discussion, so there was some concept there that you could develop. So I would start really, you don't have to decide what that vision is. Libby, when they said Governor Prince, you've got 5¼ acres, what are some thoughts about what you would find to be appropriate or whatever? I mean, I have some thoughts. I have about 3 or 4 ideas in my mind kind of thing. But, just really sharing that kind to generate discussion, because you don't know what you want or don't want until you start talking about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I
for
mean,
example, you had the Barrett study. Was there any real discussion about the options that she came up with? And I hate this one, I like that one, that may be a place to start. It's really just sharing views which have underlying, I think, values attached to it. And once you flesh that all out, you're not going to decide, but with a consultant and with community engagement, you'll have started that discussion. I think you can definitely say what you don't want.
Do we know if the RFI went out?
No, there's a draft RFI, I actually worked on it, so I think it's somewhere being reviewed.
Because that'll be helpful. I mean, I think all of our planning, whether it was Cape Cod 5 or 107, started with somebody who knew what they were doing some legwork. So I think the RFI feedback would be helpful in combination with.
And I understood why we did it. I wouldn't necessarily rely on it. I'm not sure what that's going to yield that
Sure.
would be helpful to you. So, I mean, it may come up with some good ideas, or it may not. Because from what I understand, it's not a procurement action. You're basically just saying, what do you guys think?
It's just
Come
an
on with
idea.
your ideas.
Right.
You have no rights under this. You're not going to be given the contract or anything, but we'd appreciate your ideas. So it may yield some interesting ideas. It may yield some crazy ideas, or nobody will come in. I don't know. But the process is internally going on.
I think one of the things that we're going to be relying on is the site plan. What does the topography tell us? Where are the areas that affordable housing might be built that's affordable? What are the different areas where housing would be the most acceptable or the most valuable? So I think that just having that survey will be helpful as part of our information.
But I know this group, as well as the trust, wants housing there. So
Oh, sure.
what do you consider sort of minimum? If half the site is housing, that's okay? No, I really think
think
you
it
should
depends
start
who you
talking
ask.
about it. You start talking about it.
But I think as a group, we might try to come to some kind of consensus. We may not become to, I think we need to maybe think about that in terms of, so that when we speak about it, we are somewhat in agreement as to what we think is valuable. Whether it happens or not is not the decision, but speaking for it is what I think we need to be advocates for housing on that property in some way, so. Anyway, I think I realize we wanted to move forward, but I really do believe that this was helpful for us to talk about what we talked about as a group and see what we still need to continue to go back to the trust. It felt like after they wrote their minutes that we had established what we were interested in, but obviously we're not quite there yet, but I do think we're closer than we have been. And I think I'll try to summarize this a little bit and send it out to you and just see if it makes sense to you, and then we can make some decisions, hopefully, on our November meeting.
Is there anything you would like me to bring to the trust for their next meeting, assuming Alan is willing to put that agenda item on the agenda? About the CPC, do we want to, anything like that?
I think it would be, I think they should talk about it a little bit, too. I think we brought it up. I think who should be requesting money from the CPC. I think I understand both sides of the story. You know, when the request was made for the bonding for Penrose, you know, we requested $500,000 and we got $300,000. And that was because of a lot of factors, but it also, you know, a lot of money was gone to the trust got that big piece. So, you know, I don't exactly know how it's being read in terms of how it looks to have the two groups ask for money for similar things. So I think maybe we could just ask, we're still what you're bringing is the Affordable Housing Committee talked about this some more. We're still considering the value of us bringing it to the CPC versus the trust bringing it to the CPC. And I think that's sort of what you had said, Andrea. What is the value of us continuing to do that? And what is the downside of us continuing to do that? Because I can argue both sides of the story. So I think that would be something, I will talk to Alan about putting on the agenda, and then you could bring that. I think, I'd just like to hear their side of it too, because I think we can't just come to one answer, and I think your point was taken that we're not quite ready to make that decision yet, so. Andrea?
Just to clarify, Nancy, I think what I was saying is, if you are interested as a committee with developing or recommending that certain financial tools be developed in the next 10 years, you can sort through who's going to develop them, whether it's the trust or the committee. But I was thinking along the lines of things like a fund for affordable housing with the Cape Cod Foundation.
Yep.
You know, there could be an Orleans fund. I mean, I'm looking at tools beyond CPC.
Yep.
That would address the scope of the money or the leveraging of the investment, and you guys being really, if they're the project managers or you're the adults or the mom and dad in terms of the vision, maybe you sorting through and prioritizing the tools that the community needs to grow this production. So as Fran, as you all have been saying, there's a financial piece of this, there's an environmental impact in terms of the character of the town, how housing is built, and there's the future of who lives here that I think rests with this committee. I think you're in a very key place that the messaging while we've got Marcia, could be really distilled down to very clear and one-page messages. You've done so much of the work to make it happen already.
So what you're saying is the CPC is one of the financial tools, and maybe we need to have a broader discussion of all the financial tools, but then that seems to go back to the trust. But maybe we need to have
I mean,
another
funding-
discussion about that.
Yeah, I mean, funding the trust, and, you know, I think that's something that we could all have a conversation about.
Yeah.
I mean, because, you know, I think, you know, I have ideas, but we're going to need support from, I think, several committees in order to get some of those ideas passed.
And that would be another topic that we need to do for a joint meeting.
I mean, perhaps a topic of, here's our thoughts. Maybe George can be here and he can say, you know, what do we have to do to see if this is a plausible situation, or, you know, what they're out there. And then Alan threw out his suggestion, which is escaping me at the moment, that he had, that there was another possible way to get trust money.
So are you saying a joint meeting again on this topic?
No.
No, okay, just each group working on it?
Yeah, I mean, just an agenda item for us to think about how we could get some more money
All
into
right.
the trust.
Well, thank you for that discussion, I do believe. Andrea, did you have something else to say?
Just that, in other communities, especially with the conversations about open space, both in Massachusetts and nationwide, there are efforts made that you develop an aesthetic in a community that the same way you might leave a piece of land, that, and that's part of the definition. The trust already has that, but we haven't really, I don't know if Jim Junkins, the guy who ran Friends, used to say that he liked going to Newport, because even if you weren't from Newport, you saw trash on the street, people would pick it up. There was a value that developed in that community about keeping it a certain way. I don't think we've developed a value yet that guaranteeing that people have a future and can choose to live here, and hear all the different ways, whether it's partnering for a low-interest mortgage program, or it's because you can donate your house or a piece of property to the trust. This global discussion of how we enable a future of people in Orleans, it might be worth exploring at the committee level, because if you can then sort through what you're interested, which tools appeal to you, then invite the trust to consider what what
Okay.
you value.
That's what I think you were saying. All right, well, we have plenty to think about. I think we'll go to approval of the minutes of September 7th meeting. Got a motion to approve?
So move.
Second?
I'll second with one small edit.
Okay.
When it says review of 107 Main Street and Affordable Housing Committee advocacy, in that paragraph, it refers to 17 Main Street,
Whoops.
should be
This
107.
is 0. Okay, we can fix that.
But otherwise, I second it.
Thank you. And I did not put the September 21st meeting on the agenda, so we'll do that one next time, next month. Okay, we vote to approve? I didn't say that.
Is Rich still here to vote?
Rich, are you still here? We lost the screen.
He signed off.
Okay.
I only asked because I was going to abstain, but without Rich, we can't pass them, so I will vote to approve because I wasn't here.
So we can't approve, we only have 3 people?
Well, no, I can vote, I would have abstained, but
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
did we have a motion in a second?
Yes. We did. You motioned.
Well,
Bill?
Bill and
I
I
made the
second.
motion.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, I missed that.
And Fran seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4, 0, 0. Okay. Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Thanks,
4,
Nancy.
0, 0. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for your great ideas, and we will
Thank you.
move on forward.